This plant is Hemerocalis hybrid, or daylily, and these are a herbaceous perennial with kind of a tuberous root system. They like regular garden water, tend to prefer full sun unless you're in very hot areas, maybe desert-like conditions. You may want to have part shade for areas like that. But if you want a good bloom, I found that these prefer some sun. Also, they stress out if you try and get these to be drought resistant. They do prefer some regular moisture to look their best. And I've also seen these grown on the banks of ponds where they were getting a lot of moisture or wet feet, and they did okay in that situation. But I would say you're safer just giving them regular water with decent drainage to the soil. They can handle a lot of different soil types, by the way. Deer will usually leave these alone, but I've seen them eat the flowers and leave the foliage alone, so I wouldn't say they're the best bet with deer. As you can see here, they come in many sizes. They can be as short as 12 inches and they can be as tall as 4 feet. And here's a dwarf one. The flower shape and color are varied, to say the least. They come yellows, oranges, and reds were kind of or rust were the older style, and now there's many hybrids that range in the white and pink and red color range, and some are even fragrant. So here you can see a different eye color on this one. So in design, I like to use these because of their strap-shaped leaves and just the spiky texture that you get from them, and also the flowers are very distinctive. That said, there are evergreen varieties, there are deciduous varieties, and semi-evergreen, and depending on what your climate is will have a large bearing on how those behave. I like to use varieties that are evergreen that rebloom. I want everything, so I guess I'm greedy that way. But in design, obviously we use these for their flowers mostly. And that said, there are some varieties that will rebloom. Probably the hardest thing about these plants is finding out what you can purchase in your area that has the character that you're after. I would recommend talking to a high quality nursery in your area, and if you strike out on that, then turn to catalogs or online nurseries, and you'll find a lot more detail about each variety that they sell and how it behaves. I used to buy these through catalogs and test grow them, but when you buy them through catalogs, you get these tiny little plants typically that take a couple of years to turn into very much, and I'm not that patient. So getting these in 1-gallon containers at a local nursery for me is a much more rewarding way to use them in a design, because I've already got a fairly mature plant when I start off. So I would start with a local nursery, see what they have, tell them what characters you're looking for, and go from there in terms of working these into a design. These are wonderful plants, but they are kind of high maintenance because they need to be deadheaded, or these flower stems or scapes will turn brown and stay on the plant, as you're going to see in a moment. These are also a good cut flower. If you do cut them, make sure that you cut ones that have a lot of mature buds on the stem before you cut them, because each flower does only last about a day, and so you need them to rotate once you've cut them and brought them in the house. Here is a median planting of daylilies when they're looking good. This is a repeat bloomer, and they've been cut back and they've come back and bloomed again. If you're going to use daylilies and you can find repeat bloomers, especially in commercial applications, I highly recommend it. Otherwise, the 3 or 4 weeks of bloom cycle you get out of them, for me, is not a big enough payback for the amount of downtime you have visually out of these. These can look bad a lot of the year once they've been deadheaded, or after the bloom when the foliage starts to look bad. And then also, if they're not evergreen in a colder area, you've got a lot of downtime for that plant being bare or looking pretty ratty. So make sure you're considering which types you're able to find and source out for where you're using them before you use daylilies in a large application like this. This is a look at daylilies used in a mass planting, so this is really oriented towards commercial designers. But this makes the point about maintenance in daylilies. They are high maintenance. You see this whole planting here that has not been cleaned up after its bloom. It still has some blossoms on there. But what happens is the maintenance companies typically come back in and they will just cut these to the ground. There's no viable way for them to deadhead these. There's so many flowers stalks to deadhead, and even though these release and they come out the way you see here, commercial guys aren't going to do that. You can do that at your own home, but I've tried that too, and what happens is all this dead stuff just stays in here and nobody wants to clean it up. When you have a mass like this, it's not a reasonable thing to expect anyway. So just know if you're going to use daylilies in any kind of mass that there's some serious maintenance associated with it, and whether they leave these looking like this or whether they deadhead them, you're going to have a big blank spot for some time during the year. And this, by the way, is late August in Northern California.